Welcome, traveller. You have in your hands the foremost and most up-to-date guide to the city, smiled over by none other than its open lord, Lady Laeral Silverhand. I have now finally finished my masterpiece, Volo's Guide to Waterdeep. A tome prized by collectors, is now updated and printed anew. Ask any broadsheet seller, innkeeper, shopkeeper, tavern owner, or bookseller if they'll soon have copies of the new edition for sale. This guidebook is the result of extensive, often hazardous explorations of the city of Splendors, most colourful city of the Sword Coast. It is the dream of many folk across Faerun to someday visit this fabled, bustling marketplace and grandest of abodes. This tome attempts to steer visitors to sights and folk they want to see or avoid. Likely you have already arrived in Waterdeep and borne witness to some of its many wonders. But in case this tome finds its way beneath your worthy eyes in anticipation of your visit, due to the commendable efforts of some friend or family member who loves you dearly, I shall explain briefly the circumstances of entry. You will have travelled through lands claimed and controlled by the Lords of Waterdeep long before you see its walls. If you come from the south by the tradeway, you'll have met the city guard at their post at Zundbridge. From the north, by way of the Long Road, you'll have passed under their watchful eyes at the town of Rassalantar. And whether by land or sea, you'll likely also have been spotted by the Griffin cavalry, even if you have not spotted them. Worry not. Waterdeep is a welcoming city, and you have nothing to fear from these guardians unless you lead a rampaging army of orcs, a horde of gnolls, or similar. They don't even require a toll be paid. Beware any city guard who demands a toll, and report the incident to a Magister of Waterdeep at your earliest convenience. If you travel in a large caravan or on a ship, you will be required to register with a Magister at the gate at which you arrived or with the Harbour Magister. Magisters can easily be recognised by the black robes they wear, and, in fact, are commonly called black robes as a result, and the city guard force that always accompanies them. Be aware that Magisters can pass a sentence without a trial. It behooves you to treat them with proper respect. If you travel overland in a small party or alone, you aren't required to register with a Magister unless your stay extends beyond a 10-day. At that point, you must register with a Magister, either at the harbour, the gates, or the city courts. Discovery of your failure to do so can result in a fine or forced labour. Of course, registration subjects you to monthly taxation. But as a truculent old acquaintance from the Dales once told me, the sheep gives the shepherd its fleece, or there'll be mutton for dinner. That is, the Magisters will get you either way, so you might as well register up front. That said, many canny visitors with business for a month or a season betimes avail themselves of the hospitality of inns in Undercliff, the pleasant farmland east of the city proper. The less well-off often find accommodations in the field ward. Because neither are official wards of the city, they aren't subject to taxation. Note, however, that because both these areas have been informally accepted as wards of the city, they don't benefit from the securities of guild law or the protection of the watch. If you choose to follow this path, be on your guard. Fools rush in where auditors fear to tread. Regardless of what size party you arrive with or by what means, if you arrive by night or in winter, expect to register. In winter and at night, the gates are shut. Ships aren't expected at night or as a regular occurrence after the first frost of the coming season, and are often met at docking by a Magister or by a contingent of the guard who will hold travellers aboard until a Magister can be summoned. None of these rules apply to the city's least used gate, the West Gate. This smaller gate opens onto the mud flats, a mucky beach used by clam diggers, shore fishers, and those brave enough to bathe in the cold waves. Those who make a living through fishing with nets or traps also use this gate, keeping their small boats on the beach to avoid docking fees. Locals register with the guard as they exit and as they enter. No magister is stationed at the gate, but no new arrivals to Waterdeep are accepted here. If you approach by air, expect a vigorous pursuit by and confrontation with the Griffin cavalry. Only specially licensed individuals and mounts can fly over Waterdeep. It is best to land well outside the city and approach on foot. No one traveller can go everywhere and see all in Waterdeep, and with passing time, some things I have written will change. With a few exceptions, I couldn't enter the villas and walled homes of the nobles without invitation, so they do not appear herein, and for obvious reasons. I dare not write of my few covert glimpses of their splendors. Ladies, I'll not forget. If you visit a guild hall in Waterdeep and are not a member, you are typically shown, as I was, into a small number of meeting rooms, and are not free to wander. Watching, attentive guards deter prying, and the result is a boring visit unless you have business with the guild. Guild members would not look favourably on my giving away secrets either, and so I avoid describing guild buildings. For the same reason, temples, shrines, and other places restricted to those of one faith aren't explored in these pages. My forays into the city of the dead, the sewers, and various city fortresses were also severely limited, and their coverage here reflects that. I believe only a long-time citizen of Waterdeep, which I'm not, should attempt a guide to the pleasant parkland that houses the city's legions of dead. Anyone drawing near any gate of the city can see Mount Waterdeep, and that's as close as most of us are ever going to get. Everyone goes to gawk at Castle Waterdeep and at Pirgiron's palace, again seeing little indeed of their inside, except by invitation of the lords. So, I've largely left those out too. A traveller could spend a lifetime in Waterdeep and not fully sample its every nuance, pleasure, back alley, or experience. There must be many noteworthy places I've missed. Those omissions aside, I think you'll agree, this is the best guidebook to Waterdeep available. I urge you all to remember with favour the name of Volo, Volothamp, Geddarm. Chapter 1, Waterdeep at a Glance. People have inhabited the plateau upon which Waterdeep stands for longer than human histories record. But as is the way across the dangerous north, civilization at the foot of Mount Waterdeep has crested and ebbed in great waves. Elf scholars assure me that it was once the site of Elinthaldaar, the capital of their ancient empire of Illifarn. So, it was already a glorious place when a dwarf prospector named Melair discovered Mithril beneath the mountain. In agreement with the Illifani, Melair called kith and kin to mine under the mountain and in the plateau, and thus Clan Malakin came to rule below as the Illifani did above. But this fruitful alliance lasted less than the lifetime of a dwarf, for the Emperor of the Elves, what they call a coronal, commanded that all leave in the retreat, that great exodus of elves from Faerun to their mystic Isle of Evermeet. Not all elves agreed with this edict, and many were determined to stay. Well, what emperor has ever willingly allowed another to sit in his throne? The coronal had all of Elinthaldaar razed by magic, and the remaining elves splintered into separate kingdoms. The Melayakin, of course, saw this as a breaking of their bargain, and never again did they deal with elves. Instead, they tunneled ever deeper under the mountain, never to be heard from again. So it was that the humans who came to the deep water harbour found it empty and suitable for their own purposes. For more than 1,000 years, folk lived and traded at the site of what would become Waterdeep. But their identities remain a mystery, with a curious exception. We know that at some point during this period, the wizard Halaster Blackcloak built his tower at the base of Mount Waterdeep and came to rule the lands around, until he, like the Melakin, vanished under the mountain. Various warlords later claimed the plateau's harbour as their own, but it was one known as Lumeaux, who is best remembered. A History of Waterdeep, Age 1, The Rise of the Warlord, records how Lumeaux raised a wooden stockade to protect the settlement around the harbour, claiming rule over the town that by then was being called Lumeaux's Hold, the town of Waters Deep. War between orcs and elves in lands farther north drove hordes of trolls south to claw at the fledgling city, and amid this danger, Lumeaux died of old age. Many bloody struggles unfolded between local folk and trolls, until the magic of a youth named Agairon turned the fortunes of war against the everlasting ones, which were destroyed or scattered. Agairon improved slowly in skill and power with the passage of the years until he became a great mage. He is said to have discovered a supply of potions of longevity, or learned the art of making such, for he lived on and on, still physically in his prime for decade after decade. In Age 2, the Lord's rule begins, with records that in the year 1032 DR, Agairon, then in his 112th winter, argued with Rowlaw, who was then warlord of Waterdeep. Rowlaw wanted to use Waterdeep's acquired wealth and strength of arms to create a northern empire. Agairon defied him before all the people, and Rowlaw ordered the mage to be chained. But when Agairon magically turned aside all who sought to lay hands on him, Rowlaw struck at the mage with his own sword. Agairon then rose into the air, just out of reach, and used his magic to transmute Rowlaw's blade into a hissing serpent. When the serpent struck Rowlaw, he died in full view of his shocked followers. Agairon then gathered the leaders of Waterdeep's armies and powerful families. While runners sought to bring them to the castle, flames roared and crackled in the empty warlord's throne at Agairon's bidding, so that none could sit there. Then, when the gathered host of worthies met in the audience chamber, the wizard seated himself on the flaming throne. Immediately, the fires died away, leaving both the throne and Agairon unharmed. From this seat, the very one on which the open Lord sits to this day, Agairon decreed how the city would be governed. While he would sit as Lord openly, a council of other lords of nearly equal power would rule with him. But the identity of those other lords would be hidden even from each other, thus preventing any of them from being approached and influenced by bribe or threat. So it was that Agairon established Waterdeep's system of governance. Agairon was instrumental in establishing many of Waterdeep's other institutions, such as its black-robed magisters, its griffin cavalry, and the city's many guilds. The first open lord ruled wisely for over 2 centuries before the magic sustaining his health failed. He now lies entombed in his tower, which you can still see standing in the courtyard of the Palace of Waterdeep. Beware that you don't approach too close, however, lest you stumble into the invisible barrier, a force cage, I am told, that surrounds the tower. Within that barrier lie additional protective wards, as demonstrated by the floating bones of the last person who tried to defy them. The name of this poor soul has been lost to time, but the miscreant was likely a wizard who sought to steal the magic treasures that had been entombed with their former owner. Now they hang in the air beyond the invisible force cage in rough semblance of their natural position, occasionally displaced temporarily by strong winds or mischievous children with long sticks. Agairon's wise rule is celebrated on the first day of Eleasis, which has come to be known as Agairon's Day. Many significant events stand out in Waterdeep's history, but none have had so great an effect on daily life than the 3 apocalyptic periods known as the Time of Troubles, the Spell Plague, and the Sundering, the most recent and hopefully final. On all these occasions, the actions of gods at war with one another led to the loss or the twisting of magic in the world. During the Time of Troubles, Waterdeep stood at the centre of events. but the effects of the more recent crises can still be seen in the city today, even though they occurred a great distance from where Waterdeep stands. When the gods walked among mortals during the time of troubles, they were cast down to the world by the mysterious overgod, Ao, in 1358 DR. Until then, none but the gods had known of Ao's existence, and since then, we have learned little more. As all know, the crisis began with the theft of the Tablets of Fate by the vile and ambitious gods Bane and Mirkul, later joined by Pal. These mystic artifacts supposedly determined the extent of the gods' power and dictated how they use that power. As punishment for this affront, Ao cast down the gods, or the ones that humans worshipped at any rate, and then demanded that they return the tablets to him. But Ao was not omniscient, it seems, nor overly wise. The gods didn't seek out the tablets, and thus it fell to mortal heroes to sort out the mess. They did so, their efforts culminating in Waterdeep. It was on the slopes of Mount Waterdeep that Ao was last seen, when he granted godhood to the human heroes Kelemvor, Midnight, who became Mestra, and Cyric. It is no surprise then that Waterdeep has since attracted a steady stream of pilgrims who worship Midnight at Mistra's temple and pay homage to Kelemvor in the City of the Dead. It might surprise you, though, to learn that Waterdavians had a short-lived penchant for worshipping Ao. The Cynosure, that great marble-pillared structure on the edge of the market, now rented out for private and public events, was built as a temple to Ao, but his worship fell from favor when all prayers to him went unanswered and folk realized they had no idea what he stood for or who he was. You can visit the Cynosure to see sculptures and paintings of all the major participants and events in the time of troubles. Entrance is free to the public on any day when no event, such as a meeting of guilds, a noble's coming-of-age ball, or some such, is scheduled. In the year of Blue Fire, 1385 DR, the spell plague gripped the world. None knew it at the time, but it has since been divined that Cyric's long hatred for Mystra boiled over and led to his murder of the goddess of magic. I was absent from the world at this time, indisposed by the force of an imprisonment spell. Elminster has since explained the events to me, but I must confess that much of what he said made little sense. It was a long lecture having something to do with stars, crystal spheres, and demiplanar reality mirrors. Suffice it to say, parts of our world switched with parts of another one, and magic was disarranged. During this period, the powerful magical fields that protect and affect Waterdeep became unstable. This led to the disastrous activation of most of Waterdeep's amazing walking statues during an attack. In the years before, the walking statues were often hidden in the ethereal plane, to be called forth only in times of great peril. Many in the city doubted that such massive, sapient constructs were even real, let alone that they guarded the city invisibly. The spell plague confirmed their existence for all to see, though, and each carved a swath of destruction through Waterdeep before it was stopped. Now the walking statues stand about the city in various states of readiness or disarray, one of the most obvious of Waterdeep's so-called Splendors. After the spell plague came the Sundering. Elf scholars insist on calling it the Second Sundering, arguing that the creation of Evermeet thousands of years ago was the first such happening. Regardless of the name you give it, the event that unfolded beginning in 1482, DR was the result of another world, called Abea, I am told, passing again into our own. The gods were once more cast into the mortal realm, this time occupying mortal bodies known as Chosen. The old troublemaker, Ao, seems to be the cause of it all, though why he chose to cast down the deities is a matter of system justice, and among those times while they were with us. Apparently, all of this was foreseen by Waterdeep's legendary wizard, Kelben Aronson, and it was only through his wisdom and the efforts of Elminster, Laeral Silverhand, now the open lord of Waterdeep, and a handful of others that the world was saved. According to Elminster, AO remade the Tablets of Fate as a result, restoring the Divine Order and separating Abir from Toril. But take that as you may. According to that roguish Longbeard, he saves the world without anyone noticing every other month or so. Chapter 2. The Wards of Waterdeep. Newcomers to the city of Waterdeep are often confused by the importance that Waterdavians give to wards. In other cities, such as Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter, districts are bounded by rivers or walls. But in Waterdeep, one can traverse from ward to ward by crossing a street, a fact that offers the drivers of hire coaches some amusement when an ignorant tourist requests a ride to an adjacent ward. Each ward has its own history, legends, and traditions based around who lived there in the past, famous or infamous events, and the uncanny things that continue to occur. For example, children, and even some adults, hop on one foot when crossing Asmar's Alley in the castle ward. Why? Well, Asmar was an apothecary who poisoned many patients, then buried them upright beneath the alley under cover of night. He was discovered, and some say that as many as 80 bodies were subsequently pulled up from holes under the alley's wide flagstones. Though this happened over a century ago, children passing through the alley still sing a song. Hop for the hollows, hop for the dead, hop on the flagstones, hop on their heads as you stroll down Warrior's Way or the Street of Silver, listen for the children's delighted screams and go give it a try. These shared stories and traditions impart to each ward a different culture, just as much as distinctions of class and wealth. Yet nothing drives residents to identify with their wards as much as festivals and sport. Nearly every race and parade in the city features a competition between wards as part of the festivities. On such days, homes and businesses fly the colours of their wards, cheer their mascots, and sing rousing songs that celebrate where they live. If you stay in the city for even a month, you're sure to see some version of this display of civic spirit. The Sea Ward stands proud on the high ground above Mount Waterdeep's sunset shadow. The rich and the powerful, or those who wish you to think such of them and can afford the rent, reside or run their businesses here. When the warlords and pirates of early Waterdeep gained enough gold, they built fortresses on what used to be fields of grass tousled by sea wind. You can still see the remains of some of those old castles incorporated into the palatial homes of the noble families that dwell in the Seaward. For the best all-around view of the glittering homes enshrouded by garden walls, go to where Diamond Street and Delzorin Street cross, right by Mistra's House of Wonder, and simply spin in a circle. Blue and gold are the Sea Ward's colours in competitions, and the ward's mascot is the sea lion, a fanciful combination of fish and feline. There's a persistent but patently false legend that the famous Lion Gate at the Field of Triumph is the gaping maw of a sea lion. The architectural designs for the gates show this to be false, however, and they can be viewed in the Map House, the Guild Hall of the Surveyor's Map, and Chartmakers Guild in the Castle Ward. Must-see locations in the Sea Ward begin, of course, with the Field of Triumph, but just across the street is the most remarkable House of Heroes, the largest temple in the city. Dedicated to Tempus, its many grand halls celebrate the city's champions of battle and sport. The winners of ward competitions are paraded here after their victories, often carried on shoulders, passed from hand to hand over the heads of a crowd. It is a sight you shouldn't miss. You should also visit the House of Wonder. This is surely the most splendid temple dedicated to the gods of magic, Mystra and Azuth, and home to mages of skill in all the world. Although your eye will be drawn to its gleaming towers, brilliant mosaics, and spell globes, also look for the humble violets growing amid the ostentatious decor. These blue flowers were Agairon's favourite, and they are planted about the temple in memory of him. Two other temples in the ward are as impressive, but in different ways. The beauteous House of the Moon has the tallest tower of any temple in the city, rising some 75 feet above the street. At its top, priests of Saloon bask in the light of the moon in all seasons. The House of Inspired Hands, dedicated to Gond, presents an altogether less peaceful experience. Here, all the great innovative minds of the city invent and experiment, attempting to create everything from flying machines to stronger door hinges. But don't expect a museum of marvels such as can be found in Baldur's Gate. At this site, worship is work, as anyone at the temple is liable to tell you. If you're looking for some good fortune, you should surely visit the Tower of Luck, a temple completely dedicated to Timera. The tower in question is actually a many-pillared atrium ingeniously roofed over with glass. Beneath the roof, a bronze sculpture of a diminutive Timora, depicted as a laughing young girl, appears to be leaping from the very top of an astounding fountain. To pay your respects and make a wish, you come around to the fountain on a walkway and toss your coin to Timora. Managing to land it in her outstretched hand is a sure sign of her favor. If you need to refresh yourself during your travels, or perhaps to primp before an important meeting or a night out, visit Suna's faithful at the Temple of Beauty. Its marbled public baths and mirrored salons are open from before dawn to after dusk. There's no fee for their services or for the advice and aid of the temple's many pleasant attendants, but donations are encouraged. 2 parks in the Sea Ward might also be worth your time. The shrines to nature, just a block away from the Tower of Luck, are resplendent gardens dedicated to nature gods like Mieliki and Sylvanus. The park is closed to all, except residents of the Sea Ward. Yet from beyond the iron fence that surrounds it, you can catch glimpses of the superb shrines, statues, and fountains within. The Hero's Garden is the only green space in the city that is open to the public, besides the City of the Dead. But it is tucked away so far to the north in the Sea Ward that it gets few visitors, which is a pity, since the fine statuary in this lush garden portrays many of the figures important to the city's history. I hesitate to mention a last location in the Sea Ward, and I will not reveal where to find it, for reasons that will soon become apparent. There is a house in the Sea Ward without windows or doors. You can't see it from the street, and those who live near it will not speak of it to others. You'll know you are near it when you see blue tiles on the streets and walls leading into an alley that passes under the surrounding buildings. At night, these tiles glimmer dimly with the blue light of foxfire. More than one route leads into the Blue Alley, as this place is known, but there are precious few ways out. Most who enter don't come back. If you see blue tiles, turn around and walk away before it's too late. Nobles aplenty live in the North Ward, but the character of this ward is more peaceful than that of the Sea Ward, though it has taverns and shops to suit a variety of tastes. The tenor of the area tends toward reserved and polite. Most streets are lined with row houses inhabited by the families of prosperous people of business, investing, and civic service. They are each wealthy enough to employ a servant or 2, or they endeavour to appear as such. For the best experience in the North Ward, go there just before dawn, buy a broadsheet and settle in at a cafe with a view of the street. Watch as the ward comes quietly to life around you. At first, it will be so silent that you'll be able to hear the resident astreet over who opens her sash for fresh air and clears her throat. Then the birdsong will begin, and shortly thereafter, you'll hear and then see the drays arriving with servants. These aren't the live-in staff used by noble houses, but people hired to come and work for a day. Most of them come from less affluent parts of the city, arriving with the tools of their trade and outfitted in their customary garb. Launderers and cooks in white, chimney sweeps and house cleaners in black, valets and childminders in grey, gardeners in green, and tutors in blue. As these servants spread out to knock on doors and begin their work, the residents of the ward take their repasts, parting fondly with spouses and children, their footsteps tramping along the sidewalks or taking them into rattling hire coaches. In the span of just an hour, the North Ward comes to noisy life and then settles again into quiescence, until later in the day when the process reverses itself as residents return from work and servants leave. The liveliest, and perhaps the loveliest part of the ward, is the Cliff Watch. Here, the plateau upon which Waterdeep sits features cliffs so steep and high that the city wall is interrupted to either side of them. Some of the most lavish residences and most luxurious taverns and inns of Waterdeep stand along this space, boasting terraces and balconies that allow one to take in the beautiful sight of the countryside to the east. Yet you need not pay their high prices, for a public walkway along the cliff's edge offers pedestrians ample opportunity to enjoy the view. The North Ward's colours are green and orange, and its mascot is the gentle white dove, depicted in flight. Many North Ward homes have dovecotes on their roofs, and the great flocks of the birds that circle over the city at dawn and dusk are a delight to behold. The Castle Ward is the heart and mind of Waterdeep, if not its soul. It houses the city's military forces, courts, government, and the market, the largest market square of any city in the north. It encompasses the city navy's docks in the Great Harbour and all of Mount Waterdeep. And it is home to 6 walking statues, numerous temples, and many other landmarks. Castle Waterdeep stands above the city on a great bluff that extends out from the mountain, its towers soaring hundreds of feet into the sky. It surprises many to learn that this isn't where Waterdeep's rulers reside, nor from where the city is governed. The castle was, and is, a redoubt of last defence should the city be attacked. But for well over a century, the ruler of Waterdeep has occupied the Palace of Waterdeep, also known as Peer Giron's Palace, and still called that by elderly and long-lived citizens, including many elves. Though not quite as large as the castle, the palace is far more comfortable and lavishly decorated, with many halls used by government officials, guildmasters, and nobles for meetings and court proceedings. If you have reason to be invited, not compelled, I should hope, to meet with the masked lords or the open lord of Waterdeep, it will likely take place in the audience chamber of the palace. There, you can witness the ancient and humble throne that Agaran first sat upon so long ago. Many other buildings in the ward are given over to city business, including several courts for magisters and the barracks of the city guard. So many of the ward's structures are offices and meeting halls for business owners, solicitors, publishers, and the like, that the Castle Ward has the smallest residential population of all the wards. Many landmarks of interest are found in this ward, aside from the 6 walking statues. You could hardly see them all in a day, but the following are highly recommended. Blackstaff Tower is a squat black blot in the otherwise pretty ward. Humble though the edifice might be, looking at the place for too long can give you a queasy feeling and the sense that you are being watched. Almost as if the tower itself has turned an unseen and wrathful eye upon you. Perhaps you think this fanciful. Well, go and try it yourself. On the opposite end of the mountain, close to the naval harbour, stands Mert's Mansion. Once a fortress-like and glowering tower, it has been upgraded with more delicate fashions of architecture since the return of its long-absent owner. Mert has quite a history with Durnan, the proprietor of the Yawning Portal. Together they descended into the Well, as the entrance to Undermountain was known in olden days. Waterdeep used to throw criminals in the well, leaving them to die horribly in Undermountain's dungeons. Durnan and Mert entered the dungeons of their own free will, and not only that, but returned laden with treasures. Both used magic to extend their lives, but they eventually parted ways. Mert kept on with a life of adventure, while Durnan built the tavern called the Yawning Portal over the well, and now, almost 2 centuries later, charges coin to descend into it. Not a bad way to part fools from their money. The glorious Spire of the Morning, dedicated to Lathander, is one of Waterdeep's most beautiful temples. But it is rivaled in this ward by the Temple of the Seldarine, dedicated to all the elf gods. The journey through Mount Waterdeep to New Olam's Academy of Music and Other Arts is a wondrous daytime excursion. The market offers a wild array of sights, smells, and sounds in which folk might lose themselves for a 10-day. The font of knowledge is a temple to Ogma. Yes, but also the city's largest public library. Titles written throughout the ages can be viewed here, under the watchful eyes of the temple's priests. In short, if I can claim this section of the Enchiridion to be such, the castle ward offers far too many splendors to list them all here. The castle ward's colours are blue and purple, and its mascot is a griffin, typically depicted in gold. These borrow colours from the city's flag and reference the griffin cavalry, of course. Champions for the ward often come from among the ranks of the guard, the navy, or the cavalry. Although such competitors have often the advantage in races and competitions, their crowds of rabidly cheering fans are usually much smaller than those of other wards. Shopping, shopping, shopping galore, or eating, 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 or drinking, 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 or lavish accommodations, or fine art, or legendary parties. The market in the castle ward is the largest market square in the city, but the trades ward is like a market town in itself and is easily thrice the market size. This ward bustles day and night with activity, both on the street and on balcony walkways that run the length of blocks and are sometimes layered 5 stories high. Shop signs appear to leap out from buildings whose sides are plastered with advertisements, all vying for the attention of the eye. Glove shops, shoe shops, jewelry stores, perfumeries, flower shops, cake shops, taverns, cafes, tea shops, inns, row houses, boarding schools, offices, dance academies, grocers, pottery stores, armour vendors. As long as it's not illegal, you can find it in the trades ward. But if you are looking for something illegal, the trades ward is likely the place to get that too. Do not do so too loudly though. The City Watch has a heavy presence in this ward, in the form of both open patrols and officers working out of uniform. As befits a place of so much business, many guilds have their halls in this ward. Of particular note is the House of Light, the hall of the Guild of Chandlers and Lamplighters. Outside the building, a wagon-sized mound of wax with hundreds of wicks is kept lit day and night, while being continually built up with adhered candles. Inside, the best works of the guild are put on display and sold, including not just candles of various colours, lamps, and chandeliers, but elaborate waxwork constructions that depict all sorts of subjects, from personages of note, to dragons, to complex and abstract lattices, all represented as fantastical candles. Magic users should be wary in the Court of the White Bull. Long ago, this plaza was a grazing area for livestock, including an albino calf that was born here. The calf's owner built the White Bull Tavern, which thrived on the spot for years and gave the area its name. You'll not find the tavern now though. It vanished, utterly destroyed during an infamous spell battle between the Archmage Thongala the Mighty and the evil mage Shile Roralthol and his apprentices. When the smoke cleared, not touched on here, Shile and his apprentices all perished, and the court was left with a rent in the weave that Argiron, god of wizards, was forced to appear and set things right. He is said to have stitched the strands of the weave back together, but a wrinkle in the fabric remains. To this day, magic brought to bear in the area of the White Bull sometimes goes awry, and the use of magic items and spells is forbidden in the area. The Trades Ward uses green and purple as its colours, and its mascot is the Mimic. This tradition supposedly arose because when mascots were first chosen, the Trades Ward took a chest of gold as its own, and was roundly mocked by citizens of other wards for not picking a creature. Now, every 4 years, the ward reveals a new object for its mascot, declaring it to be the Mimic. The nature of the object is subject to much speculation and rumour until its unveiling. For months afterward, the object becomes the source of practical jokes in Waterdeep. Rock gnomes and wizards use illusory mouths to lunge from real versions of the object. Artisans craft beautiful fakes out of cake or paper that are easily crushed when assumed to be real, and so on. As of the writing of this Enchiridion, the current Mimic is a tankard. What about the Southern Ward? Many scribes forget. It is called the Southern Ward, not the South Ward. Waterdavians are peculiar about this, and if you insist on referring to it as the South Ward, expect to be corrected, or thought a fool. The name derives not merely from its southerly location in the city, but from the Southerners who settled in this district as the city grew. Today, the ward still hosts most of the travelling merchants who visit the city, and is made up of many enclaves, blocks, and streets primarily occupied by citizens who trace their ancestry to the old empires. The Southern Ward is the main holding for the food trade, including the best singers of Kalashite music, and examining the most stunning works of dwarven crafting. But the first challenge is finding where these treats are housed. The Southern Ward has long been a district of labourers catering to travellers. So its folk have adopted the architectural custom of building homes and businesses above stables or around inn yards, near to where wagon trains are housed. Residents of the Southern Ward take pride in their legacy as overland travellers and hard-working folk. So it should be no surprise that the ward's mascot is the mule. On their competition flags, a pugnacious mule in rampant pose stands on a field of red and white, colours said to represent the blood and tears the people of the Southern Ward have shed during their labours. Not a landmark as such, but surely a sight that must be seen, is the moon sphere. This isn't a structure, but an event that occurs during every full moon, when a glowing spherical field of blue light appears in the square known as the Dancing Court. Any creatures that enter the sphere find that they can fly about inside it just by willing themselves to do so. For centuries, Waterdavians have used these supernatural events to develop a unique style of dance. But amateur enthusiasts aren't welcome, except on certain daylight appearances of the full moon. Even when the full moon isn't out, the dancing court is worth visiting because of the adjacent fest hall, the Jade Dancer. During appearances of the moon sphere, people sometimes daringly leap into the field of magic from the balconies of this 3-story tavern, dance hall and inn. But the fest hall takes its name from a peculiar dancer within it, rather than the court outside. The Jade Dancer is an 8-foot-tall jade statue of a woman that magically animates and dances for patrons, and on occasion serves them drinks. Elminster has informed me that despite its dexterity and seemingly fragile beauty, the Jade Dancer is as puissant as a stone golem. So enjoy the show, but don't get too rowdy. Street lamps don't fare well in the dock ward. Their candles, oils, and glass are too regularly stolen or smashed. The Guild of Chandlers and Lamplighters makes a half-hearted attempt to repair the street lamps at the start of each season, but for most of the year, locals are forced to carry their own light when travelling these streets at night. The colours of the dock ward are burgundy and orange, and its mascot is a swordfish that has always been depicted as green for reasons lost to time. The folk of the dock ward take competitions seriously, and they frequently draft their champions from the rough and tumble sailors who come to the city. Some say they draft pirates, but that is pure slander. Frequent complaints arise that these women and men are more citizens of the sea than of the dock ward itself. But if they register with a magister and pay taxes, they are as welcome to compete as any long-term resident of Waterdeep. I could write a book about the City of the Dead. It is such a fascinating place, filled with so much history and so many stories. But alas, there would be few buyers for Volo's Guide to the City of the Dead, since it would be of interest mainly to Waterdavians, and the topic is one about which they are already intimately knowledgeable. The City of the Dead is no drab cemetery. It is a great park of grassy hills, tended flower beds, artfully placed clusters of trees and bushes, beautiful sculptures, astounding architecture, and gravel paths that wend intriguingly through it all. Long ago, Waterdavians largely abandoned the practice of burying their dead, instead entombing them in mausoleums. For centuries, the major mausoleums here have each been connected to an extra-dimensional space where the dead are taken, mourned, and interred. Those who can afford it memorialize the departed with sculptures, making the City of the Dead an open-air museum that features some of the most stunning, haunting, mournful, and downright eerie statues ever crafted in marble or bronze. Nobles and wealthy merchants have competed to erect the grandest markers for their dead, leading to a wide variety of styles and concepts created by artists at the height of their skills. One of the cemetery's most impressive attractions is the Warriors Monument. This intricate, 60-foot-high sculpture depicts a circle of women and men striking down trolls, orcs, hobgoblins, bugbears, and barbarians, all of which are falling backward and outward around the warriors. Above all of them, a flying griffin rider spears a skeletal knight whose breastplate bears the symbol of Mirkul, god of the dead. But this statue is also a fountain, and the wounds on these combatants gush water. Don't try to imagine it, just go see it. And see it as Waterdavians do. Pack a midday feast, have a picnic, and then take a stroll through the beauty of the place. The Dock Ward was long considered the most dangerous district in the city, but the Field Ward has since taken that title. I don't doubt the residents of the Dock Ward are glad of it, for in some respects, this area has never truly deserved its bad reputation. Yes, aside from the Field Ward, this is the area where most of Waterdeep's poor reside. Yes, it is home to some of the least literate people in the city. Yes, most of its taverns are inhabited by habitual drinkers, and far too many inns charge by the hour. But all must concede this: the residents of the Dock Ward often work the hardest while living under the sternest conditions. Warehouses, poorhouses, and tenements dominate much of the area. The streets are steep throughout, and few have space alongside for pedestrians. Wandering through the ward can be a bewildering journey without a guide, except in the immediate vicinity of the piers. Shop signs and advertising of any kind are rare, and warehouses and other businesses often have no sign at all. You either know where you are going and have reason to be there, or you are lost and a likely mark for pickpockets or worse. Gentle traveller, you would most certainly have heard of the Undermountain, a realm of famous riches. Beneath the plateau of Waterdeep lies the largest and deepest dungeon in the world. It sprawls out under the city, said to plunge as many as 20 levels deep. The Malarkin dwarves first excavated the tunnels that would become Undermountain, and the Drow are said to have dug their own tunnels up from below. All were claimed, altered, and expanded by the mad wizard Halaster and his apprentices, who are believed to dwell in the dungeons to this day. What drove them deep into the earth remains a mystery, but Undermountain's allure is a siren song that still draws many. If you want to see adventurers descend into the depths, or perhaps glimpse some returning with wondrous treasures, visit the Yawning Portal in the Castle Ward. Chapter 3: Surviving in the City. Waterdeep is no village led by hidebound hierarchs or petty fiefdom ruled by the whim of a warlord. It is a city of laws, molded by Tyr's spirit of justice. As a rule, you can trust members of the City Watch to do their duty diligently, and you can expect that the city's magisters will be fair. If you have cause to come before the masked lords or the open lord herself, rest assured that if your cause be just, justice will be done. If, however, you find yourself in the wrong, know that though it might take time to weigh that wrong on Tyr's scales, his hammer will fall, and it will be wielded by Waterdeep with a vengeance. Natives of the City of Splendors are notoriously slow to take offense. A Waterdevian plainly states their feelings as a warning, so that one is apt to hear, "I don't find that amusing, friend," said pleasantly, before real anger is shown. Some visitors misinterpret such behavior as cowardice or ignorance. He was too stupid to realize I insulted him. For those who act on such misjudgments, however, surprise and regret are the usual results. Most Waterdevians are also slow to take fright unless facing magic or monsters. A swaggering warrior threatening them is quite likely to be stared at calmly, or even sneered at. The only mortals that Waterdevians fear are a few unstable wizards and the lords. Durnan often says to those who are surprised by the nonchalance of the yawning portal's regulars concerning the open entrance to Undermountain in their midst, and only when they've incurred the wrath of said persons themselves. Unlike in less civilized settlements, punishment for crimes in Waterdeep isn't typically used as public entertainment. Scheduled executions occur behind the high walls of Castle Waterdeep, and floggings are carried out in the watch posts nearest the sentencing. The Watch makes every effort to take individuals into custody quietly, so as not to disrupt other citizens. Those bystanders generally return the favour by giving altercations between criminals and the Watch a wide berth. Waterdeep has a complex library of law and custom set by precedent, the main body of which can be read in the Code Legal. This document is available in multiple languages at the Palace of Waterdeep and in the common tongue, provided on request by the magisters at the gates and in the harbour. Be aware that the Code Legal provides only an outline of typical sentences for various offences, and magisters have broad discretion when meting out justice as they see fit. Any masked lord can overturn a magister's ruling, but there's rarely a masked lord around when you need one. Expect to be questioned at the gate, or when you register with a magister regarding your ability to cast arcane magic. Wizards, sorcerers, and other arcane spellcasters who intend to stay in Waterdeep for any length of time are required to register with the city, and will be strongly encouraged to join the watchful order of Magi and Protectors, headed by the Blackstaff. Members of the watchful order are expected to render service to the city when called upon, acting as temporary members of the City Watch or City Guard. Their expertise often helps investigators determine whether magic was used to commit a crime in the city. Members can also expect to be tapped for assistance during and after fires, natural events that cause multiple casualties, or other non-magical disasters. Members of the Watchful Order form a more or less sociable association in the city, working together to keep an eye on any spellcasters who opt not to join their guild. Any havoc caused by a spellcaster in Waterdeep risks drawing the wrath of the Lords of Waterdeep. So it behooves the Watchful Order to watch all its members. Waterdeep is a city of broad boulevards that thrum with traffic. All day and well into the night, a bewildering melee of wagons, carts, horse and pony riders, carriages, buggies, hire coaches, and Waterdeep's signature towering drays, further discussed below, surges through its major thoroughfares. Fortunately, most roads are flanked by paved sidewalks that give pedestrians plenty of space. And most of the widest roads have raised dividers that allow an individual crossing a street a safe space to step out of the fray and wait for traffic to pass. The city's centuries-old layout dictates its traffic patterns today. Waterdeep lies on a plateau adjacent to a long mountain that shields much of it from the sea. In the southern third of the city, where the land slopes up from the harbour, the High Road and the Way of the Dragon are the two main south-north roads. These converge both at the Weymouth near the southern gate and in the heart of the Trades Ward, where the city is at its narrowest, bounded by Castle Waterdeep, high on a spur of the mountain, and the walls of the City of the Dead. The conjoined boulevard then splits to the north, continuing as the High Road, and to the west as a boulevard called Waterdeep Way, heading toward the Palace of Waterdeep, not to be confused with Waterdeep Castle, which it passes hard by. In the middle of the city, 6 boulevards run north from Waterdeep Way, where they meet the road that encircles the market. On the other side of the market, 5 boulevards continue north. The aforementioned boulevards, along with the Street of the Singing Dolphin in the Sea Ward, are the major arteries of the city. Hire coaches and drays can be most frequently found on those streets, and traffic is at its most hectic there. Most other roads in the city run east to west, but regardless of their direction, traffic elsewhere is generally less hectic and thus safer to cross. Nobility in Waterdeep are granted the right to bear arms. In the legal code of the city, this means not merely the ability to carry a weapon, but the right to retain up to 70 equipped soldiers. These soldiers always wear a house's colours and the house's arms of grace. A heraldic device, often borne on a shield, worn as a cloak pin, or affixed to a helmet. Others throughout the city, even foreign dignitaries, are permitted to retain only up to 16 armed warriors, and laws against impersonating those in the employ of the nobility mean that other mercenaries and bodyguards most often dress plainly, so as not to be mistaken for the retinue of a noble. So your first clue that you might be in the company of a noble is the sight of a large number of armed and uniformed soldiers. Many nobles, particularly younger ones seeking entertainment, travel without an entourage of guards or only in the company of other nobles. In this case, you'll know you're in the presence of nobility because of the deference others give them. Follow suit and you should be fine. Above all, be polite. Always address a known noble as Lord or Lady. A short bow or a nod of the head to acknowledge a noble upon each meeting and parting is customary. Obsequiousness and servility is something all Waterdavians scorn, but you should also beware of acting in an overly familiar, boastful, or disrespectful way when in the presence of any noble. Though this sort of behaviour isn't a crime, and laws against duelling prevent a noble from initiating a direct armed confrontation, the noble families of Waterdeep have immense power in the city, often in unexpected quarters. Many have influence in nations as distant as Calimshan and Cormyr. Be assured that any slighting of a noble will not be forgotten or easily forgiven. If you're not certain whether someone is a noble, address the gentleman as sire, or the gentlewoman as good woman. Neither will give offence, and generally a noble will politely correct you as to their actual title. Well, gentle readers, you've reached the end of my Enchiridion. If you've yet to arrive in the city, its splendors await you. If you're reading this within its walls, please set aside this chapbook to experience the city. You might even see an extraordinarily handsome author hard at work reviewing one of Waterdeep's drinking establishments. If you do so, I greet you in advance. Well met. Autographs cost 7 nibs,